Niigaan, thanks for being here. We're always happy to hear from you. For starters, how did you feel about the passing of Queen Elizabeth II? You wrote about it. Not everybody, our APTN audience here, is reading the Free Press, so if you could just give us a rundown about your thoughts on her death.
Well, I mean, she was a matriarch. She was a mother, a grandmother, a wife. And I think, all of us feel the pain of that family, regardless of who it is. And then at the same time, the Queen's ruled for 70 years. That's 7 decades. Canada's only been in existence for a little over 150 years. So almost half of the existence of Canada, Queen Elizabeth reigned over this country. And so we have to remember that this Queen reigned over some of the most brutal and draconian, violent times in Canadian history, and was in a position to do something about it, but chose to do nothing. To support the Canadian government in their ongoing theft of lands, the delivery of the residential school system, the imposition of the Indian Act. And so it's a very complicated relationship with the Queen. I think Indigenous peoples take seriously the role of the monarchy. We respect the Crown. Of course, the Crown is how we share a relationship with the country. And so we go to the Supreme Court, we have to talk about the Crown. We want the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor General at those meetings when we have with the Prime Minister. But at the same time, it's been a very complicated relationship with Queen Elizabeth.
Absolutely. In the column you talked about pictures of the Queen and Hello magazines laying around homes of family members growing up, but you being an activist when the Queen visited in 2010, can you talk about the divisiveness of the monarch for First Nations people like yourself? I mean, you said it's a complicated relationship, but for most people, it's like multiple layers of complication, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that was my experience growing up. I remember in 1984, when the Queen came to Winnipeg, my relatives taking me around to the gathering just so that we get a glimpse of the monarch, of the Queen. And also when Prince Charles came back in, about a decade ago and just this past year. People take seriously the role of the Crown, and in Canada, the royalty is generally considered celebrities, I think, not just for Canadians, but also for Indigenous peoples as well. Yeah. During the 22 national visits that the Queen took over her 70-year reign, every single stop, Indigenous peoples were there. And we were there to present our issues that Canada was taking up with us, and to remind the Queen that she has a legal obligation, a responsibility to intervene when Canada doesn't hold their end of the treaties, when they steal land or take away our children or violate Indigenous rights so that we have to go to the Supreme Court. Every single stop. And I can remember right here in Manitoba in 1970, although I wasn't alive then, but I can remember in researching this when I was a student. In 1970, Dave Kershane Sr. Was in the PAW and gave a speech directly to the Queen and said, what are you doing about all of these issues involving treaty? What are you doing about the fact that our children are suffering? What are you doing about the fact that our communities are in dire poverty while Canadians are so rich? And at that time she said, oh, I will do something about it, or I will listen to your grievances and I will take that to the Prime Minister. But of course, none of that happened, and so, like I said, it's a complicated relationship with Queen Elizabeth.
Now let's jump ahead to your thoughts. King Charles. He's long been an advocate of Indigenous ways. He's a climate activist himself in some respects, as much as the monarch could be. Do you expect that there's going to be some sort of a change within the Crown's relationship with Indigenous people under King Charles III?
Yeah, I just want to address what you just said there just for a second. People want to say, oh, the monarch doesn't mean anything, oh, it's symbolic, or oh, it's in name only. Well, then why have it? And the real problem is that we have to go to the Supreme Court. We have to go to every single Governor General meeting in which he calls to us, because we take seriously as Indigenous peoples the role of the Crown. And I think Canadians should take that seriously as well, too. It's not just something that's an ornament or a symbolicness. And if you see the role of lieutenant governors and governor generals, I think they understand that role better than everyday Canadians. Mary Simon, as an example, the first Indigenous governor general, she takes very seriously that she has the ear of the Prime Minister and that she can do things. When the Pope visited this country, the Mary Simon was the one who chided the Pope to say, you have to earn a relationship with us. You can't just walk right in and expect it to happen. So that being said, we have King Charles now, and King Charles III. All signs point to a more friendlier monarch than perhaps one that was ambivalent in the past. And so what we've got here is we've got somebody who has a track record of speaking about Indigenous issues. In fact, last May in the North said that, you know, if we want to deal with climate change, and he said this directly to the Canadian Prime Minister, you have to listen to Indigenous people.
Right.
And I mean, that's a good sign, but at the same time, I mean, I think we're all sick and tired of pleasant words and platitudes and statements. We want to see action. And what is it that this king will do when it comes to the issue of consultation or the issue of the ongoing challenge of the doctrine of discovery or you know, this upcoming implementation of Indigenous rights, which is supposed to happen with Bill C-15? It's not that the monarch can control what's happened in Canada, but certainly has a role to play in guiding Canada to honour treaties that the Crown signed 150 plus years ago.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us to discuss this. I guess we'll all just wait with bated breath and see what this new king brings to us here in Canada. Thanks so much, Niigaan.
Yeah, Miigwech, thanks.